Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope everyone didn't miss me too much in my break last week. I was on vacation, so didn't get a video out to everyone, but back in the routine now and recording another video. Um, this week's video is just something I've been kind of thinking about. It's a topic that comes up often, and I think deserves a little discussion. And that's just tracking body composition results. And how do you assess whether your body composition is getting better or worse or staying the same? So there's luckily no shortage of techniques to do this. It really depends on the person, their preference, how they feel about different things, their access to different tools, that type of stuff, right? But I think there is a method that will work for everyone, no matter who you are, um, and what your finances may be, or what your uh, personal preferences might be, and how you want to do it. So I'm going to go over a couple of the most popular ones, and some of the ones that I use personally, as well as some of the ones that I use with my clients. So the first one, and probably the most popular one, and also the most controversial one, is using the scale. Now, I will 100% agree with everyone out there screaming at me saying that the scale does not tell you about body composition. And that is true. It does not tell you body composition. It tells you how much, I guess, force is being exerted by gravity by on your with your body weight. And so that number that shows up on the scale is just representative of that value. It does not tell you whether underneath your body, whether you're gaining or losing fat or gaining or losing muscle. So it doesn't actually tell you about your body composition. However, we can use it as a good gauge of body composition as long as we are consistent and we are doing a few other things correctly. So let's address the muscle side of things when using the scale. So the scale is not going to tell you whether you're gaining or losing muscle, but we can be sure that you are probably not losing muscle or losing very little muscle if you are doing two things correctly. You are eating enough protein, and that's roughly around 1 gram per pound of body weight, or 2.2 grams per kilogram if you're in the metric system. Or if you're obese or overweight, you can use your ideal body weight. Uh, um, but that's roughly the amount of protein you want to be using to be eating in order to make sure you are at least maintaining your muscle mass. And you also need to be resistance training. And so you need to be strength training, as I've mentioned many times, approximately 2 times per week. And those two things, if you are doing those two things, it's pretty hard to lose muscle mass. So when you see the number fluctuate on the scale, you can be pretty sure that you are at least not losing muscle mass and you might be gaining muscle mass depending on what you're doing. So that takes care of the muscle mass equation of the scale. And then we have to do a couple other things in order to make the scale useful. First off, we need to be consistent. So we need to use the scale, step on the scale at the same time of day under the same conditions. And we need to do it every single day, if not close to 5 out of 7 days a week. Why? So, because you want to use that number and compare it accurately against the numbers previously taken. So, if you step on the scale at 5 p.m. one day and you step on the scale at 6 a.m. the next day, comparing those two numbers is not fair, right? Because you've done a whole bunch of different things, you've eaten, drinking a whole bunch of things, you've used the bathroom, all these different things. It's completely different conditions, right? So you want to compare the number in order to make accurate comparisons under the exact same conditions. And this is actually true of most other body composition measurements techniques that we're going to talk about. You need to replicate the conditions exactly each time, or as best you can exactly, so that you eliminate variables that might be at play. And the same is true of the scale. The same is true of DEXA scans. The same is true of taking body measurements. The same is true of putting on your clothes, your pants, whatever. However you're measuring body composition, you need to replicate the conditions exactly the same every time. So using a scale, you want to pick a time of day and step on the scale under the exact same conditions every day. What I like to do for most people is do it first thing in the morning after using the bathroom. Take off all your clothes, step on the scale, do that the same thing every single day. Now, that eliminates some amount of variability in the measurement. So we're getting a better, more accurate comparison. And then, but there are always going to be, but once we account for not potentially losing muscle, and also account for variability in the time of day and under the circumstances that we're taking the scale measurement, the number can go up and down, right? And it's going to go up and down mostly day to day. Has nothing to do with body fat loss or muscle gain, right? Most of that number fluctuation is going to be food in your stomach, water, hormones, all kinds of different things that just change the number on the scale, and that's fine. But what we want to do is we also want to be consistent, and we want to take it every single day, right? So that we have a trend. So we have a trend day after day, week after week, month after month, and then when we look at that trend over weeks and months, we can see, is it going up generally, or is it going down generally, or is it staying the same generally? So by using that, so you've taken out the variable of losing muscle, and you've done it consistently, so you know that you're eliminating fluctuations of time of day and that type of stuff, and you're doing it every day. When you see the scale going up, that means you're probably, it could be muscle mass, right? So we're going to have to account for some other variables here, some other way of assessing that, which we'll talk about in a second. Or if you see the scale going down, you're certainly not, the trend line going down over weeks and months, you're certainly not losing muscle mass because we're eating adequate protein and strength training. So we must be losing body fat. Okay. So that is a good way to, that is the only way to use a scale to accurately assess body fat. Now, I said that if you see the scale going up, you don't know whether that's body fat or muscle mass. It could be muscle mass, right? How do we solve that problem? Well, I generally like to have people use a second measure of body composition to confirm or deny the body fat gain or body fat loss, or body fat gain or muscle gain. So you can pick any number of low-tech ways of doing that. You could stand in front of the mirror and take pictures of yourselves, and that can serve as a way of validating whether you see additional body fat or you're seeing more muscle on your body. So if the scale is going up and you're seeing more muscle on your body, then you can be sure that that's probably muscle that you're adding, which is a good thing. So you don't need to be worried about it. If you see the scale going up and you're not seeing more muscle or you're seeing more body fat, then obviously you're gaining body fat. You could choose to do tape measurements, where you just take a tape measure. You take a measurement of your upper arm, your upper thigh, your waist, your hips, your chest, your shoulders, and just kind of get an assessment of all the different spots in your body and see whether those numbers are generally trending, the right numbers are trending up. So if your biceps are getting bigger, you're adding more muscle. But at the same time, is your waist staying the same or getting smaller, or your hips staying the same or getting smaller, then you're probably, if you see like for example, you see your shoulders getting bigger, you see your arms getting bigger, you see your thighs getting bigger, but you see your waist staying the same and your hips staying the same, then or getting smaller, then you're probably gaining muscle, right? If you see your biceps, your thighs, your chest, your shoulders, they're all staying the same, but your waist and hips are getting bigger, you're probably putting on body fat, most likely. So you could use a tape measurement. You can use your clothes, right? The most low-tech way to assess body fat gain or loss is, how are your clothes fitting? Are they fitting the same? Are they getting looser? Are they getting tighter? If they're getting looser generally, that means you're probably losing body fat. If they're getting tighter, depending on where they're getting tighter, like if they're getting tighter in your biceps, well, you're probably putting on muscle. If you're getting tighter in your thighs, you're probably most people might be putting on. Some people could put on fat in their thighs, but if they're getting tighter in the hips and the waist, that's a problem, right? That's where we see um, most likely body fat gain. So we use a scale. The scale can be a very accurate tool, but you need to have a second way to validate whether if the scale is going up, whether you're actually gaining muscle or losing body fat, or gaining body fat, sorry. And so using pictures or measurements or the way your clothes fitting acts as a second way of validating whether that's body fat gain or that is muscle gain, right? So um, that's important when using the scale. And you can throw the scale out and just use if you want, because the number really affects you no matter how many times you tell yourself, this is just a daily fluctuation. It could be water that I drank or food or whatever. It's normal to go up and down every day, but that number can really put people in a funk. And I understand that. So if you're one of those people that the scale really bugs you, it's not good for your mental health, then throw the scale away and you can just use tape measurements. And you could use or pictures um, or the way your clothes are fitting. How often do you do this? So we talked about doing the scale every single day if you possibly can, because that's needed to just get a trend line. But as far as tape measurements, pictures, and the tight clothes test, how often you do that? Pictures you can probably do once a week, every 2 weeks if you want. But again, you need to be consistent, same time of day, under the same layings, in the same room, under the same conditions, all that fun stuff, just to get fair comparison between previous pictures. So remember that consistency is always important, regardless of the measurement. For tape measurements and pants measurements, maybe every 6 weeks you can do them. 6 to 8 weeks, I would say. You're going to see less change in them over time, over the acute time changes, but greater changes over longer durations. So every 6 to 8 weeks would be a good time scale for that. Again, but you want to take, put the clothes on and take your measure or take your measurements at the same time of day under the same conditions, right? Don't do your measurements one day and first thing in the morning, and then the next time you do them 6 weeks later, do them after you had a giant supper, right? Like, I mean, obviously the food in your stomach's going to make your waist bigger and your hips bigger and stuff like that. So don't do something like that. Try to do them under the same time of day, under the same conditions. That's all important. Now, there are plenty of high-tech ways that we can assess body composition. The first and probably most common body composition, high-tech way to assess body composition is with bioelectrical impedance. So many scales today that you step on have bioelectrical impedance and tell you your body fat number. And the way it's doing that is by sending an electrical signal up through your body and trying to assess how that signal comes back and determining how much muscle you have in your body. Now, these are highly variable, right, and completely inaccurate, right? The number that you see on the scale is not accurate. It is not your accurate reflection of your body fat percentage. However, if you are consistent and you do it every single day and you do it under the same conditions, just like you should be taking your weight, you can look at the trend and probably get a pretty good idea of whether that trend is going in the right direction, right? It's going to be consistently inaccurate all the time, and consistently inaccurate at least gives you an idea of trend up or down or same, right? So the number is meaningless, but the direction you're heading, with your gaining muscle or losing body fat or maintaining your current body composition, can be a useful piece of information. So while the number is completely useless and don't trust it, the trend can be useful as long as you're consistent about the time and day and conditions that you take it under. The second most common way to assess body composition is to use something like a bod pod or a DEXA scan. And while these are considered probably one of the more accurate ways to assess body composition, they are still full of inaccuracies. And so they, again, it is subject to the conditions in which you take them under. So you need to be mindful of going to the same place to get it done. You need to do it at the same time of day as you previously got the measurement done. You need to do it under the same conditions. So, like, the workouts, the food you ate the day before, how much fluid you take, all that stuff can affect these machines. And so you want to try and replicate the exact same conditions you go and take these measurements under these machines at the lab, um, as best as you possibly can. I realize it's hard because you're kind of at the whim of the people that are operating the machinery or whatever, but don't try to go to one DEXA place and then go to another DEXA place. You could get wildly different numbers and readings. Same thing with a bod pod. You can't just go to one bod pod and then go to another bod pod, and you could get all kinds of different numbers, even though nothing has changed. I've seen it. I've done it myself. I've seen it happen to me. I was completely surprised about it, but it's 100% true that you know even just switching machines, even though they're using the same technologies, etc. There's algorithms involved and technology involved, and so things can change between machine and machine and operator to operator. And so you want to go to the same place at the same time of day, under the same conditions, as best as you possibly can. That means like with the workout you did the day before, the food you ate the day before, all that stuff, track that stuff, and then replicate it as best you can the next time you go and get your scan, so that you can have a fair comparison. It's just like stepping on the scale every day. You need to have a fair comparison to the previous measurements, and like going to a different machine would be equivalent to like stepping on the scale at a different time of day. So you have to try and replicate that stuff, and it's also not 100% accurate. Take it for what it is. It has some margin of error. If you go one time and it says you're 10%, and the next time it says you're 9%, and the next time it says you're 12%, like that's probably all within the error margin of the machine itself, and like the variability and all the things that we just talked about. So, if you're generally falling within the same range, you're probably the same body composition. But if you see wildly different changes, then you're probably sure that there's some kind of substantial change there, with that number, or you see a trend in a certain direction over the course of years. And how often would I suggest doing a bod pod or DEXA scan? At most once every 6 months. There's not really much. You're gonna get your head all in a crazy space if you go more frequently than that because of the variability, like I talked about. So go once every 6 months, and if you're gonna spend the money on those, they're not terribly expensive. A couple $100 usually you can get one done. But again, not everyone has access to them where they live, and it can be a hassle to do. So they're not terribly accessible. And so if you have access to one, you want to use one, you want to spend the money, good, great, go ahead. You can get some useful information out of it. But they're also, just keep in mind, while they are considered the gold standard, especially the DEXA, there's still some inherent error in them, and it's been proven out in many of the studies done on body composition assessment techniques. So those are some of my favorites. Personally, from a day-to-day, everyday person, a scale plus pictures and or body measurements or tight clothes tests is my number one way to do that. But you can pick the ones that work for you, and that's fine. So with that, I've already rambled for nearly 20 minutes on body composition analysis, and so I'm sure you're probably sick of hearing me talk. So I'll end this. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them below. Happy to take any questions, or if you want to direct message me, also that's also always an option. And as always, I encourage you to join my newsletter. Unfortunately, the QR code is not up there. Let's see if I can add it mid-video. Technology is going to work. Oops. Let's see. Save. I guess not. Oh, there it is. There it is. All right. So the QR code is there at the top of the video. Scan that with your phone, and you can be brought right to the page on my website to sign up. You just enter your email address, and that's how you keep up with all the content that I put out, these videos, as well as blog posts and other things of interest that I send out every week. Always actionable, always helpful, and free of charge to you. I do have one more spot open for one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in that, you can go to my website, rjbhealth.coach. Click on the schedule discovery call button on the homepage, fill out the form, and I will shoot you an email, and we can arrange a time to chat a little bit more about that. Or you can just direct message me, send me a message, and I'm happy to schedule time that way as well. With that, I hope everyone has a great week, and I'll chat to you all next week.